Hello everyone, this is part 11 of What If Naruto Got Lost in Time, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. Be sure to like and subscribe, it gives me more motivation. Enjoy. Rin leaned against the cool wood of the large oak tree. It was wet and the bark felt odd with its ridged edges and jagged lines against the soft hairs on her cheek. The leaves were starting to change color a bit, the edges a russet and the leaves fluttering around the large clearing. Her hands clasped the hem of her shirt like a delicate pair of butterflies. Her hair was limp and the color of smoothed wood, falling against her face, and her eyes were watching the young man in the center of the clearing. Leaning her frame on the tree, she began to wonder what exactly she was doing here, and started to contemplate her reasoning as to why she was here, and why it had entranced her so. A little ways in front of her, a small slope met the beginning of the clearing, surrounded in a line of dense konohagakure trees that blocked out all of the bustling city noises some miles away. Minato sat cross-legged on the small slope, arms propping his torso up and his flaxen blonde hair moving slightly in the wind. Rin couldn't see his face from the angle, but his tense shoulders gave off all she needed to know. Obito was sitting next to her sensei. She wasn't exactly sure how much of her sensei the Hokage was anymore, hands clasped behind his head and laying on the soft grass that colored green, flecks of it splayed in his hair from his endless fidgeting, maybe out of nervousness. Nearly moments after Naruto had told them what little of his outlandish story he had quickly scurried off to the particular clearing, intent on making a large permanent seal, that way what happened would never happen again. Personally, Rin didn't believe any of it. She hoped that it was true, for her sake as much as Naruto's and everyone else's, because if it wasn't, well, she didn't want to think about that. Naruto was practically family. They spent 8 laborious months of lame D-class missions to extreme butt-kicking B-class ambush ones, and yet it had all fallen apart when he left for an extreme 2 years. 2 years of worrying, of betrayed emotions and said trust. And now back again, scurrying around the clearing on a massive sheet of rice paper, with brushes sticking out behind his ears and a large pot of ink so that he had enough of it to fill the entirety of the paper. He danced around the large sheet of paper with light feet, making sure not to step on any seals that he'd already done. Sensei, Rin whispered softly, so that she couldn't be heard over the wind. I don't trust him. Minato looked over his shoulder. His eyes had lost the hard steel edge they had adapted into at the office, ever since Naruto brought up something about Minato and Jiraiya and ramen. Rin didn't understand, but whatever they were talking about was enough for Minato to give him and his far-fetched idea a good shot. I know, he said erringly. She growled a bit, low in her tea. Then why are we here? You don't understand, Rin. He told her morosely, and it reminded her of the times he spoke to her, and all of Team 7, when they were younger and wet behind the ears. Well then make me. She frowned petulantly. He shook his head. It's not something that I can't just tell you, Rin. It's hard to explain. Obito shifted a little again, plucking grass out of his head and turning his attention away from Naruto. I believe him. Rin shot him a look. Minato smiled at him a little. I mean, he clarified. It makes sense, you know. He said that he specialized in sealing, and no offense to Naruto, but he doesn't strike me as the kind of person that could ever be a spy. He's too emotional. He saved our butts that one time, and he's just, you know, Naruto. I feel like I've known him for a long time. Her eyes once again moved slowly to Naruto's bustling form. Most of his bangs were clipped out of his face, although most still flopped over anyways. His pants were rolled up, sleeves rolled, and his face was smeared with ink where he had wiped it with his hands, toes and hands messily covered in choppy bits of ink. He was currently hovering over a small ink-laden spot near the corner of the immense drawing. Not a sealer herself, Rin couldn't even begin to digest the very workings of such a large and complex seal. Minato, however, was fascinated. Much to her digression. So, theoretically speaking, he had moved from his spot near Obito on the slope, to hovering over Naruto's shoulder to take a better look at the artistry. If you reversed the outer rings of the seal, and reversed the order of each graph, you'd be able to travel forward in time. Yes, theoretically, Naruto echoed, making a large arching motion with his hands over the seals. It's really fascinating. Minato spoke up once again, more like a child with a candy bar than a 20-some or so year old Hokage. Who actually designed this seal? Not me, Naruto said quickly. My mentor was a rather smart man, albeit his rather unorthodox tendencies to things unrelated to sealing. Minato looked up. Sounds like an interesting man. I'd love to meet him. At this, the other blonde smiled softly. Yeah, you two would get along well. I'm sorry there's so much I can't tell you, but yeah, I figure if you did you'd create some sort of paradox. That, and, Naruto blanched. My sensei would cane me for even thinking of revealing anything. You should have heard him when I left, rambling on about all this safety precaution. It was terrible. Minato only nodded in solemn understanding. No doubt his curiosity was piqued, but he refrained from asking anything too adventurous. Has Konoha changed much? Naruto stretched his back, looking closely at Minato, studying him. Minato noticed that Naruto did that a lot with people. Identical water-colored eyes stared at each other, and Naruto finally spoke. He must have found what he was looking for, Minato speculated. Not particularly, no. Naruto shrugged, continuing to work. I mean, obviously new heads have been placed on the mountain, shops come and go. Although you'll be happy to know that Ichiraku's ramen stand is still alive and kicking 18 years in the future. Minato brightened. Now that is a good thing to know. Yeah, Naruto smiled slightly. Not all that much has changed. New allies, new alliances, he stopped slightly. Enemies. I'm sure. The Hokage turned serious. Naruto watched his seals carefully, making sure that his conversation wasn't messing up his concentration. Yeah, I wish I could tell you. God knows you could help us, but I don't want to cause the universe to blow up or anything. He tried to lighten the mood a little at the end, but it hadn't worked as well as he hoped. Or maybe it did, because Minato's lip quirked slightly. Yes, well, I'm sure there's something you could tell us. Naruto tipped his head back thoughtfully. Well, of course there were things he could say, albeit the fact that suggesting that the fifth Hokage had extremely enormous BS might give a tip-off to anyone who had known the princess in her prime. But they wouldn't know anything about Sakura, and as long as he didn't mention Sasuke as anything more than a brooding bratty prodigy from some big shot clan, they probably wouldn't know the difference either. Of course, mentioning anything of Kakashi or Jiraiya may set off something, seeing as though neither of the two are as yet and Naruto was planning on keeping it that way. Maybe there were a few humorous anecdotes he could share. Hey you two. He whistled to the two Chunin, who jumped, startled. I know you're listening, might as well hear this too. Obito smiled sheepishly, while Rin tightened her arms that were folded over her chest, scowling. Geez. Naruto grimaced, not even out of her teens and already a bit of a battle axe. Let's see, he plopped down cross-legged on a blank spot on his parchment, tucking the paintbrush behind his ear and smoothing his inky hands over his rolled pants, making them even dirtier than they were. He motioned for the others to follow in suit, and they tentatively dropped down. My Genin team was, well, let's face it, everyone hates their Genin team in the beginning. He smiled wistfully. You see, mine was a bit different. I won't explain most of the mechanics or the reasons for it, but my team had a bit more, dynamics than most teams. To this day, I honestly think it was the stupidest and smartest move Konoha ever made to put us all on that team. He finished with a strange gleam in his eye, and from where Rin was leaning on her hands behind her she wondered if his eyes were wet from the reflection of the sky in the blues of them or because he was tearing. Anyways, so a lot of people didn't really like me in the village. I might have deserved it, I was a bit of a prankster, but it was for reasons a lot more personal to them and things beyond anything I could control. Minato's eyes softened, knowing he was talking about being a Jinchuriki. You're not going to tell us why? Rin interrupted rudely, but she wasn't really feeling the manners, and Naruto deserved some jeering. Nope. He grinned. Where would the fun go if I did that? Rin scowled. So there was me, and then of course, there was the damsel in distress. Naruto winked playfully at Rin, who scowled even more. And you know me, Prince Charming, just waiting to help my dear princess out. Sadly, the beautiful maiden was already charmed by a not-so-charming other prince. And a royal jackass. At this point, Rin scoffed. Oh, he's a jackass because he got the girl before you could. I think you're just being a bad sport. Oh yeah. He rolled his eyes nonchalantly. And then the guy goes off to slam an electric jutsu into my chest, destroys my left lung, and then runs off to betray Konoha. Obito's jaw dropped, Minato's eyes widened, and Rin momentarily stopped her jeers. That's not funny, she said finally, deciding that the whole thing was just a big joke. Naruto only smiled. Well anyways, story of my life. We split ways, my beautiful princess goes on to be a medic nin. I haven't really talked to the royal jackass because whenever I do he's trying to skewer me with kunai. He sent a look to Rin, as if meaning to be childish. His way of showing the love. That's it. Obito frowned. There's gotta be more you can tell us. He paused momentarily, eyeing carefully the reactions on their faces. Rin was still put off and distrusting, Obito was curious, and Minato was interested, but harder to read than the others. I have had two sensei in the entirety of my 18 or so years. He decided that if the universe would blow up and out off or he created some sort of paradox then it would have done so already. One of which was Jiraiya. The other, well, you'd never guess and I'd never tell so I think it'll continue to be a secret. Jiraiya. Minato sputtered. Wait a minute, when you said unorthodox tendencies you meant spying on the bathhouse. He nodded sagely. He was a good man, good soul. Alas, our large bed Hokage packs a very powerful punch, and he didn't stand a chance. Large bed, powerful punch, Rin muttered to herself, pulling pieces together. Your Hokage is Tsunade. Yeah, Damabar-chan can pack a punch. Naruto tenderly rubbed his arm. Even to this day it hurt to think about when she broke his arm with a punch aimed for his head. He'd never miss his tax reports again. Wait, Obito started quickly. Are you sure you're supposed to be telling us this? I mean, couldn't you be changing the future or something? I might be, I might not be. He said impassively. I could be changing things around, or I might not be changing anything at all. He shrugged. Minato caught on quick. What do you mean by that? Again, he shrugged. Tsunade. Rin breathed. That must be so cool. Tsunade's a Hokage. She's still in Konoha. Oh my gosh. The many medical phenomenon she's solved. Rin proceeded to mutter to herself the many jutsu and medical theories that Tsunade had discovered in her time in Konoha, and a massive list of achievements the woman that Naruto had come to know as the old hag had made. Truthfully, Naruto felt humbled listening to Rin babble. Sakura did it all the time, but it was different. It was Sakura, she babbled about everything. Maybe he should have given Tsunade more credit. He had always just figured she had kind of coasted her way through medics with her reputation as the granddaughter of a Hokage. Granted, she was still a reputable medic. Apparently, that wasn't the case. I think we've broken her. Obito whispered fiercely, and Minato chuckled. Oh. He turned to Naruto, all skepticism lost in the moment. What about your parents? Can you tell us about them? Naruto stiffened in a swift jagged motion, and he let out a discreet breath to calm himself. It went unnoticed by Rin and Obito who were much too young to be able to notice such subtleties but Minato caught it like a hawk's eye. Well, Naruto drifted off. I didn't really know them. They are, SD. When I was younger. His sentences came out choppy, like he was trying to force them out. So I can't really tell you much about them. I'm sorry, Rin said softly, and she looked like she meant it. He smiled back pleasantly at her. Well, I'm very sure they loved me, and they were worthy people. Both of them gave up their lives to save their country. Their baby also. He mentally frowned, wondering why this anger was rising up. It had been a long time since he had ever felt anger to his parents. Ever since, well, it never happened after he had met them. That's, Rin gulped, over her disbelieving and doubtful, and now that she was really thinking about it, also very narrow-minded, look on things, she had been trying to see things from the other perspective. A very good way to I think. Her two teammates shot her the, shut up now, look. But she refused to notice. It's honorable, and it's noble, and it proves that cowardice can be overcome. She sent him a sympathetic look. I'm sorry though that it was at the price of raising you. Naruto blinked. Almost stupidly. He hadn't expected anything to have come out right today. He had first expected to be completely expelled out of Konoha on either the terms of mistrust or terms of insanity. It was by sheer luck that he remembered the promise he had given Minato, sheer luck that Minato had even believed him. And now, with both Minato and Obito steadfastly believing him, it was more than he could have ever wished to hope for. He certainly hadn't expected Rin to go along with it. She had blossomed into more than just a naive little girl with big dreams to be a medic nin. Rin was now someone who looked at things for more than just face value, a good trait in the shinobi world. It wasn't helping him now, but that was fine. Naruto had expected it to take a couple days, weeks even, until Rin accepted his theory. Even by a sealing master's rights, this was an outlandish story. It was definitely a miracle that she even believed this, and seemed to be forgiving him. It's all right, he said finally. I've met a lot of people and I'm happy with where me and my parents stand. Even if it is nothing more than platonic friendship, he could live knowing that he had met them. He had defied time, and he had met them. That was enough for him. Obito nodded sagely, taking everything he had said word for word. Out of all of them, Obito was the most open and trusting. Naruto believed it to be a good and bad thing. Minato was more skeptical, nowhere near Rin, and he assumed Kakashi, but the relationship he shared with Kakashi in this time period was nothing more than acquaintance, but still a bit of doubt. But Minato knew his seals, and he was formidable in him enough to know that this was a true time seal. And eventually, he'd make the ultimate Jinchuriki seal, the one on his stomach right now. Rin nodded as well, already caught up in her normal female empathetic emotions to say anything else. Surprisingly, Obito was the one who caught on. Wait a minute, happy where you stand. I thought that, you never knew them. He pointed out, frowning. True. Minato blinked. He had overlooked that, he was a bit busy thinking about who Naruto's parents were. Naruto jumped. He hadn't meant for that to slip. Rin frowned. She had just opened up and trusted him, and now she already believed he was faking the whole story. Well, I actually didn't pick this time period just randomly. He began lamely, not knowing how to say the truth without revealing anything. I actually came to see my parents. Obito's eyebrows shot to his hairline. Rin blinked. Minato, however, nodded. He had figured. And, did you see them? Yeah. He breathed, smiling slightly. They really are good people. So you time traveled to get closure. Rin whispered in awe. Whether in the entirety of the whole time traveling thing or because she thought he was stupid to threaten the balance of the world was beyond him. And that's where you've been going when we didn't see you here. Obito put the pieces together. Well, not exactly, but Obito had just given him a good cover. So he nodded. Yup. That's. Minato was starting to say something, but he became distracted by the droplet that had hit his nose. Naruto looked up, alarmed. The sky had darkened as they talked, and a slight drizzle had taken Konoha by siege. He jumped, quickly using one of Yamamoto's few Mokuton jutsu he had taught him to bend the trees to move over the seal, creating a canopy of leaves and wood to surround the large piece of parchment. He didn't want to create a large Doton jutsu to cover because then it would look too conspicuous. What could the officials say to a few bent trees? The only person who could have possibly done so would be a deceased Hokage. Time travelers didn't count. The rain had begun to fall more steadily, the pitter-patter was becoming audible and the other forest trees had begun to sway. Naruto finished his jutsu by placing a water-repelling jutsu on the paper. It wasn't enough to hold off a downpour, but if water ran down from the leaves it would be enough to hold it off. He turned around to see Rin gaping at him like he was some sort of scientific phenomenon and Obito gasping at him like he was God. Minato had his arms folded, looking exasperated. Is there anything you can't do? Minato whispered with a grin. Rin clapped her hands. Mokuton jutsu. Wow. Just who are your parents? Sweet. That's so cool. Obito smiled lopsided at him. He rubbed the back of his head. Hey, you see, my sensei when I was a chunin was this guy who could actually use Mokuton jutsu. I don't really know the mechanics of it, but he did teach me the basics. Or at least, the basics I could use without being related to the first. Still cool. Obito repeated. Naruto laughed. He picked up his portable sealing kit. Well, more like a container with ink cartridges and a couple spare brushes. Why don't we get back to the village? He smiled at them. I need a shower. Rin gave him the once-over. Definitely. Minato sometimes felt both blessed and cursed to be the Hokage. Cursed, when his many assistants came in with copious amounts of paperwork that continuously flooded his office by the house. The worst were the ones that had little to nothing to do with him, like fixing a pipe in a leaky building, and the second worst were the political issues that slapped him in the face. He personally hated the council with nearly every fiber of his being. The least they could do was hold elections, not just appoint clan heads whenever they see fit. And then there were times when he rejoiced, because of the sheer knowledge he now had access to that made everything just so much easier. The sun was barely coming up, and he had rushed into his office and opened the Konoha vaults. He was now looking at a large tapestry that was spread over most of the flooring in his office. It held everyone who was born in the last 20 years, their parents, and things about them. Something like a family tree, except, these were usually used by medics looking for genetic diseases, not Hokage looking for any sort of match. Well, Naruto was born around this time, so that must mean his parents were about this age. It was a long shot, and it would take an extremely long time to be able to hound out all these people, especially a one that would match. Alright, he was desperate. He had a hunch, and he needed, to know if he was right. He remembered Naruto the day he had met him, his reaction. The shock, the surprise, the anger. It was an odd glint in his eyes, but Minato was sure it wasn't a pleasant one. If he was right, then everything would fit. He was near certain, just looking at their identically perfect blue eyes. And he was blonde, not entirely uncommon in Konoha, and they weren't exactly the same shade. Naruto was a bit darker, which made him believe his mother had darker hair. The skin was close though, and he was sure if he went into the sun a little more instead of cooked up in the office he'd have that tan. But, he chewed his lip, squatting down near the near-endless list of names. Was it possible? Hokage-sama. His lousy intern, he didn't want one, but his secretary was thinking of going away for vacation and someone had to be decently trained to be the secretary of the Hokage. Apparently, it was a job description all on its own, had opened the door, spinning the top part of the tapestry with a loud S. And then, the intern proceeded to gasp and jump, making the tea she was carrying splatter onto the now sped and wet part of the tapestry. He wanted to bang his head. "I'm so sorry." She set the tea down quickly on a table next to the door, pulling a form out from under her arm. He groaned. More paperwork. An unidentified Anbu has been released out of the intensive care ward in the hospital and, she gulped, watching his fiery eyes. The new hospital policy requires you to sign a form for a blood test to be done to find any relatives. He paled. Unidentified Anbu now needed signatures from him to get consent for all their treatments. That was insane. There were so many forms and he was already swamped with paperwork that he certainly didn't need piling on his desk without stupid things like new medicine being prescribed to his Anbu or inane things like a blood test. That's it. He jumped to his feet, and the intern gasped again, knocking into the table and spilling the tea all over the table and the paper. He strode out of his office, careful not to step on any names on the giant piece of parchment, and proceeded out of his office. Sir, wait. She hurried after him. The F forms. Minato quickly swiped the pen out of her fingers, signed a messy signature, and gave the clipboard back to her. Now, I am leaving for what may possibly take 3 hours. I want that tea cleaned up and the tapestry left spotless. He hissed the word, watching her flinch. And for all my paperwork to be put on hold. She was left gaping, before she closed her mouth and then opened again to rapid-fire more of things that were so dire, and needed his attention immediately. And by the way, you're fired. And he then opened a window and jumped out of it, successfully leaving her jobless and appalled and with no way to come after him. The hospital was in a frenzy. The attendant at the front desk was swarmed by concerned parents, sisters, brothers, aunts, uncles, even children. Many of the nurses were running around with supplies and all the medic nin were currently treating a handful of people that had been caught in a burnt building. The authorities had put out the flames, but it was a rather busy building. The first floor was a coffee shop, second was an office building, and the last two were apartments, one of which was having a birthday party, and many of the parents here were simply over-concerned because the fire was on another floor entirely. At least, that was what the only nurse available had told him. He had given up the blood readily. A long time ago before Anbu he had been squeamish of them, but after a while, he simply decided that they were like kunai. All he had to do was imagine that it was kunai, not a grotesque-looking syringe, watching the blood flow into it. Yuck. The nurse was an old lady, her hair was graying and she had it pulled into one of those odd-looking shower cap things, this one being pink and matching her scrubs. She was mean, even to him. He would have let Rin do it. Honestly, he didn't know how his young teammate did it, but she made it painless when she gave shots. But then Rin was a curious being by nature and would immediately ask why he wanted one. And that was an answer he didn't want to give her. The last thing he needed was her running off to Naruto and demanding, in that way of hers, with her hands on her hips and her lips pursed, to know if him and Minato were. God, he couldn't even say it. Really, he could barely even wrap his mind around it. She pulled, wrenched, the needle out of his arm and he held a wince. Oh, was he in captivity in Iwa now? He was pretty sure that hurt like tea he had been through before. The old nurse told him to wait for a couple minutes, and lie his head down so he didn't get nauseous. She said it would take about a week or so to get his blood tested, and then compare it to the sample they had of Naruto's on his file. He had told her to keep that in secrecy, claiming Anbu material or whatever. He hoped she at least didn't go blabbing that he got a blood test. The last thing he needed was the hospital running around giggling about how the Hokage, apparently, got blood work done for an STD or something. And then have Kushina with an axe ready to come after him. He stuffed his hands in his pockets, and belatedly realized he didn't want to go back to the tower that awaited him with paperwork any time soon. It was by chance he ran into the one person he was milling about. Oh, Minato. He turned around, and smiled. Naruto was balancing a paper bag of groceries in one hand, and another cradle to his chest. Minato waved. Naruto, what are you doing here? He asked. The blonde grinned. Just some grocery shopping. I'm renting a block away from here, although the landlady was kinda upset I stopped payment for 2 years. He said sheepishly. But I did pay extra before I left. Time travel, huh? Minato laughed, as if they were just joking around. Naruto laughed too. You gotta love it. I think I'm stinking my place up with all those ink pots though. But hey, let me go and drop this stuff off and let's go to Ichiraku with Obito. Sounds good. The two were walking side by side, and anyone who didn't know them would have suggested them to be brothers. Minato luckily had enough sense to change out of his Hokage robes, and was now in standard shinobi wear of slacks and a shirt with arm gloves. Sandals, of course. But most people knew who he was by his face. Naruto, however, didn't seem to be a shinobi at all. His hair fell in his face without his high tie 8, and he had cuff baggy jeans and just a normal t-shirt. He had a nice apartment, with a good view of the park across the street, and on the 3rd floor you could see a little past the walls to the mountains in the distance. Minato wondered where he got the money, because honestly, he doubted it was a smart investment to time travel. In fact, it seemed more like it would eat up your wallet instead of help it. But then again, maybe Naruto just made some smart bets that he already knew the outcome of or something. It was possible. I go through the window. Naruto whispered fiercely, motioning with his head to a couple arguing at the entrance to his apartment complex. They do that all the time. And such was the perks of being a shinobi. The apartment was spacious. Sparsely decorated, but it looked decent compared to some shinobi he knew. Kakashi, for example, had a crate box as part of his living room. At least Naruto had decent taste, and a nice kitchen with granite countertop. The walls were whitewashed and the floor was wooden, with long windows that stretched from the ceiling to the floor. Making yourself comfortable, Naruto said between a potato chip bag in his mouth. I'm just gonna run this into the kitchen. He moved into the other part of the apartment where the dining and kitchen were. Minato shrugged, plopping himself onto the couch. Huh, he whispered to himself, looking at a letter that was opened, and sitting along with a pile of other mail. Minato took a quick peek at the hallway, and he heard Naruto faintly humming as he put away the stuff he had bought. Minato gave the letters a once-over, definitely Konoha Post, and most of them seemed like written letters, no magazine subscriptions or anything. He figured because there wasn't a point in them when you traveled time, who cared about news when you'd be 20 years before it happened anyways. He scanned at the dates, and gasped. All of these letters were from over 19 years in the future. He bit his lip. He shouldn't. Really. But Naruto would never know. Ah, hell with it. He picked up the opened letter, starting from the beginning. Hey, Naruto. When will you ever tell me about where you are besides the fact that it's nice weather and you eat ramen nearly every day? I mean, We could start with some of the people you hang out with from day to day, or you don't even have to tell me names. How about just personality? I'm sad, Naruto. I wish you could tell me, I wish we could be close again like we used to be. Minato snorted. Who was this? His ex-girlfriend or something? I suppose I should start with myself. Everything's fine at the hospital, Shushu has me working like a horse or something though. It's terrible. Shushu. Minato blinked. Naruto dated the Hokage's apprentice. Not bad. I tried talking to Sai. But it's like talking to an idiotic 5-year-old. Honestly, that guy makes me mad. Although Kakashi-sensei and I have been meeting for lunch every couple weeks, just to keep in touch. It's hard, with his Anbu and my crazy hospital hours, and his L. It's terrible how much he reads that stuff. Even worse that Jiraiya still writes it. But we make it work. Kakashi-sensei. Minato chortled laughter. Even though this letter had a rather sad tone to it, he couldn't help it. Kakashi was Naruto's genin-sensei. He just couldn't see it. He couldn't. And he never thought Kakashi was a pervert. Please write back whenever you get this, wherever you get it. Love, Sakura. Minato contemplated that maybe Sakura was part of his genin team. It would explain why she was trying to keep in touch with their sensei and why they were so close, without dating. But Naruto had suggested that he liked her, with the whole Prince Charming speech. But in the letter it almost seemed like he was giving her the cold shoulder. Minato. He quickly put the letter down where he found it, and swapped it for one of the newspapers lying around on the floor before Naruto could see him snooping into his personal life. The headline read, Sound vs. Konoha. Naruto blinked when he saw him. I don't think you're supposed to be reading that. You know, paradox and stuff. Oh. He dropped it quickly. He had originally planned just to use it for show, but now he was genuinely curious. Sound. What's that? Naruto scratched his head, as if finding a suitable way to phrase this. It's new shinobi country. Oh Togakur. I dunno, we don't really get along with them. A while ago, they sabotaged one of our Chunin exams. Chunin exams are supposed to be neutral. Minato stated obviously. Naruto shrugged. Oto doesn't play fair. But I suppose, a while ago for you is quite a leap in the future for me, I guess things have changed. Yeah. Naruto sighed soberly. A lot. Minato watched him sympathetically. Oh. Anyways, let's go get Obito before he throws a fit. Naruto smiled at him, and he laughed. As they walked down the stairs, Naruto gesturing to something that he wasn't really paying attention to, Minato noticed the hand gestures he used when he talked. He street USD how Naruto and him really did have this odd uncanny likeness to them that was a bit abnormal. He supposed there were many blondes in Konoha, many with titan skin and blue eyes, so he really shouldn't be thinking about this. But, could he possibly? That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.